Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, March the 18th, year 2020, show number 1248. I am your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening. We won't have Melissa on the show tonight, unfortunately, but we will have our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim is going to be on the phone with us live from Mexico. He is in a ridiculously beautiful. Look at this. Don't show me pictures like this. What are you doing? That's where he's going to be when I call him in 15 minutes. What a bastard. He is having a good time in Mexico. He and his lovely girlfriend, now officially his fiancée. So congratulations to Jim Dalrymple for proposing to his girlfriend over the weekend. They look quite happy. I'm very, very happy for both of them. They have found each other and are hopefully going to have a good life together. So congratulations to Jim Dalrymple on that. We'll talk to him about that. I'll also talk about what's it like in Mexico for him. Is there any, if you're at a resort in Mexico, how do you self-distance? Is there concerns about coming home? He's a Canadian going home to America. Is there a concern there with the borders being closed, certainly between Canada and the U.S. for all non-essential travel? You can't kill a virus with Heineken. I know Jim's going to try, but what other things are going on down there? I also talked to him about WWDC was canceled, as predicted, as expected. Apple has put a good spin on it, and so far a lot of things I've been reading about it from developers, from people who are directly affected, is this is not the best situation, but it is the best given everything else that's going on now. It takes the decision away from developers of, do I have to go? Should I go? Will I go? And now they can relax and not worry about that sort of thing. So it's good to hear that developers are feeling okay about that decision. We're also going to talk to Jim about the new MacBook Airs and iPad Pros. Now, it was rumored that Apple was going to be announcing something in a press event in March. Obviously, this is probably what they were going to announce. Some people said that it was kind of in poor taste for Apple to announce new products now. And to me, that just seems silly. Apple has always been known for, as they call itself, working through crises, whether that's a stock market crisis or whether it's a company crisis or whatever it might be. And this is a crisis they're working through. These products are ready now. Why wait for some indeterminate period of time in the future to release them? It's not really going to make a lot of difference. The Apple stores are closed. People can buy them online, though. They can buy them by Amazon and get them delivered. So I don't think that's much of an issue, at least certainly not an issue I would give any credence to. And then in our starting point photography segment, can better gear make you a better photographer? Yes or no? We'll talk about that on the starting point photography segment. So, serious question. How y'all doing? Hopefully no one in the Your Mac Life audience is sick with this, coming down with any symptoms. Everyone is fine. Everyone you know is fine. Hopefully everything is good with you, your family, your friends, the people that you know. Send us an email to Shawn@yourmaclifeshow.com. Are you working from home? Have you been forced to work from home? Are you voluntarily working from home? Can you work from home? A lot of folks can't. If you're an auto worker, if you're a waiter or a bartender. Luckily, as I've been pointing out, I've been working from home for 26 years as of tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the 26th anniversary of me starting a version of Your Mac Life. 26 years ago on a Saturday afternoon, 1994, Adam Clark and I started what we called the Apple Talk Show, where we did pretty much what I'm doing now. The technology has changed. My brain just popped on that. The technology of what I've been doing has changed, but not a lot else. I've got less hair. I've got more hair on my chin, less on my head, but the head stuff is voluntary for the most part. That's kind of weird. Kind of a weird thought. It's still the same. Functionally, it's the same show. It's always has been, always wanted to be, first of all, entertainment, that the people who are watching or listening enjoy themselves for the whatever period of time that we do it for. For you folks who may not have been around at the beginning, and not many of you were, the show was originally 3 hours long and would have 6 interviews per show. So I would be going around just nuts for a week trying to find 6 people to interview. And sometimes it was easier than others. Sometimes it was very hard. I had some very bad interviews. I had some very good interviews. I had a lot of fun. It was silly always, because that's what the show I wanted to do. Everything else I'd always seen was always too serious. There were no other podcasts. Remember, podcasting wasn't even a thing back in 1994. The internet was only, the World Wide Web was only 5 years old at the time. But Apple was just in the beginning of its serious troubles. They had a lot of products out there. A lot of them were crap. They were selling things they shouldn't have been selling. Apple sold CD drives at one point. 1-speed CD drives. Again, that's how old I am. I remember 1-speed CD drives. And the company didn't seem to have a lot of direction, things going for it. I think at that time, Apple was a success in spite of its management. I think the worker bees at Apple were doing the best they could given the resources they were given. And certainly the Macintosh community, ironically enough, the Macintosh community, small c, is bigger now than it was then. But the Macintosh community, capital C, is larger then than it was now. And I say that because I include user groups and Macworld Expos and all kinds of other things along those lines. I think the community is what got Apple through those dark years. And I wanted to be part of that. I was a MUG member. I was a MUG president. I wanted to find a way to communicate to more people. And someone had a real audio studio that they said I could use on Saturday afternoons. And so one of the other guys who worked at the same company I did was a wannabe audio engineer. And he said, let's do this. He said, what would you do? And he said, yeah, we can do that. I said, all I want to do is talk. I want you to handle all the other stuff. He said, yeah, I can handle it. He did. And that's how we got started. Monty says, this show was the reason I went to my first Macworld Expo in 2011. Dave D, I can't remember when I started listening. It was around then. Jay was still in the booth. No, Dave D, Jay didn't show up until 2002. What's that, 8 years after I had already started. 1994, started in the ISP in Vancouver. Then I moved to a professional studio out in White Rock. And then from there, moved down to Nashville, Tennessee in 2002. And that's when Jay became part of the show in 2002. Jay and Wally, exactly. Hopefully Wally's doing well. Jay actually posted a picture on Instagram of his former home had been destroyed by the tornado that went through there a few weeks ago. So I'm glad he wasn't there anymore. So that's the genesis of the show 26 years ago, and the ways it hasn't changed. I don't do the interviews very much anymore because it's really, if only because the people I used to interview haven't changed. It's the same old voices, and I don't want to talk to the same people all the time. To a certain degree, I've gotten quite jaded with regards to the Mac media community, the punditry of the Mac media. And because I've gotten more knowledgeable, I know who's full of shit and who isn't. And the ones who are full of shit, I don't want to talk to anymore. A lot of folks I used to talk to have moved on to Apple. Chris Breen, I couldn't do an interview with Chris Breen nowadays. Dan Frakes, couldn't do an interview with them because those folks are now working directly for Apple. But for the most part, it's just not something I've got a whole lot of interest in doing anymore. One of the problems is that everyone I used to interview now has their own podcast, and they interview each other, and I'm not included, so I'm not going to interview them. I'm not going to interview them. They're not going to interview me. Yeah, see how childish that sounds? But anyway, I've done a few, but not nearly as many as I used to. Like I said, we used to do 6 a show. I remember going back to looking at some of those old archives, not listening to them, but looking at the websites for them, going, Jesus, how the hell we pull off 6 people a show? That was just amazing. And remember, think about the technology we had back then. There was no video conferencing. It was all audio. It was literally a microphone pointed at a speakerphone. That's how we got started doing audio interviews. We'd call the person. We'd be in a commercial break. We'd literally call the person up on the phone. Hey, you there? All right, good. Going to put you on speakerphone. Put the speakerphone down, and Adam would point a microphone at the speakerphone. And I would talk directly at the speakerphone so they could hear me. And I'd get other people going, how do you do that? Dude, it's simple. It's a microphone and speakerphone. They're like, what? Yeah, that's all it was. It was just as low tech as it could possibly be. Wasn't nothing fancy for us, that's for sure. But yeah, 26 years as of tomorrow. So, and I say this, well, since the 20th anniversary, I've said it every year. I don't know how much longer I'll do it for. Certainly Melissa has given more energy to me to do the show because it's fun. I hate. By myself, I utterly hate it. I've done it for years on end in various places for various reasons, and I hate just this. It's not just I don't want you guys looking at my face for an hour and a half or 2 hours. It just is not interesting for me personally. I don't find talking to myself all that particularly interesting. Mosquito said there were occasional interviews with folks who had big Mac installations at their workplace, like universities. That was interviews. Yeah, one of those was my friend Steve Melnicki, who used to work for the University of Pittsburgh. He was the Mac administrator for the entire university. 5,000 Macintoshes he had under his command and control. But yeah, there's just not a lot of interesting enough people. And the other thing is I've asked people to be on the show and I haven't gotten responses. And I'm now at a point in my life where it's like, I ain't chasing your ass around. I'll send you an email and ask if you want to be interviewed. And if you don't respond, I'm not sending you another email. I don't got to chase you. I don't care. I don't need to do that. MacMan says, I actively clear my Wednesday nights so I can listen as often as possible. That's very kind of you, MacMan. Thank you very much. Susan Gare says, I just arranged video conference lessons for Logan, who's been getting into beat making using digital audio workstation software. Cool. Rory, our 14-year-old, has been getting into Blender and 3D rendering and animation software. So this free time they've got might turn out to be kind of useful. So as I said, later on in the show, in our Starting Point Photography segment, we're going to talk about can better gear make you a better photographer. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. All that and much more coming up. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on the show. As always, we have our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing good.
you damn well better be.
I don't know what day it is, but I'm doing good.
I just posted up on the video the picture of where you are right now, you bastard.
Right now, I'm looking out at that right now.
Talk about practicing self-distancing.
Well, you know, I'm not near them.
No, you are not near them at all. Do you actually go down to the you're at a resort in Mexico. How is it there?
No. I'm not in a resort. We're in Sayulita, which is about 45 minutes north of Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, okay.
So we actually have a condo in Puerto Vallarta, but we came to Sayulita first and rented a villa up here. So that is the fourth floor. That picture that was taken is the fourth floor of our villa.
It looks like there's quite a few people on the beach, though.
Yeah, yeah, it's packed.
Is that a good thing? Or are you worried about that?
It would seem to me, looking at all of the news, that Mexico is about the safest place to be right now.
You're self-medicating with Heineken, aren't you?
I am. I mean, I have a built-in HEPA filter with this beard, so
that's right.
there's nothing getting through. So, I'm good. But, honestly, there are, I believe, somewhere around 60 confirmed cases in the country of Mexico. And there are none here. Yeah. There are none in Puerto Vallarta. So, we're going to stay here until Saturday, and then we're going back to our place in Puerto Vallarta, and we're going to stay there another week. We didn't plan to, but, with everything that's going on, we figured, why not stay an extra week?
Now, when you say we, I feel comfortable pointing this out. It's we is you and your brand new fiance. Congratulations, Jim.
Thank you.
That is fantastic. Did you go down to Mexico with the idea of doing that, or did you just get drunk and go, oh, what the hell?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I got here. You said I've been drinking since Sunday. That's actually not true. I got here Saturday. So, and there's no hockey on. They canceled the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, and so, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, you want to get married? I mean, no, I actually did not come down with that intention. I did not.
Really? So while you were there, this popped into your head?
Well, so it popped into my head on the Thursday before we left on Saturday. Friday, I still didn't know.
Yeah. And
then Saturday, I kind of figured out, you know what? I think, I mean, we've been together for years now.
Yeah.
And it was time.
Yeah, good.
So it's one of those things where all of a sudden it just kind of dawned on me that, because I'll be perfectly honest, I never thought that I would get married again.
Yeah, that's understandable.
But, and here I am. So.
Well, I thought it was very funny because to me, I thought something was up when you posted the first picture of you two. What's her name, by the way?
Erica.
When you posted the first picture of you and Erica on Twitter, I went, he's never posted a picture of Erica before. I thought,
never.
Is he gonna? And then a couple days later, you made the announcement. I went, oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
So good for you guys.
She had no idea, and honestly, neither did I. So, but it's amazing what 2 days of drinking will do.
That's right.
2 days of drinking and a canceled NHL season. Like, holy shit, what am I going to do now?
Now, is there any concern for you getting back into the U.S.? You're a Canadian citizen, but you're going back to America.
No, I'm a permanent resident in the States.
Okay, all right, good, all right.
So, I have a green card.
Yep.
I'm all legal, and there's no issues. So we did check on that stuff.
Good.
Like, if something did happen, would I be able to get back? Maybe they wouldn't let permanent residents in, only citizens. And they said no. And even in the announcements that they've made since then, they said all citizens and permanent residents can still come back. So yeah, I'm good. And if they don't let me in, I mean, there's lots of Heineken here, and I have a condo in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah,
so
no kidding.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's right. Oh, shucks. I so wanted to come back to your disease-ridden country.
Well, and the Bay Area is especially bad right now.
Yeah.
And when we had this part of the Sayulita vacation had planned for many months.
Yeah.
So this wasn't like, oh, let's get the hell out of Dodge. Although I joked with people and said, yeah, that's what I did. I just got the hell out of Dodge. But no, this was planned for a long time. We had the rental of the villa. We had, all of this stuff going on. And it was, after you check things and after you look at things, it's just, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? That's what I want to do.
Yeah,
and
good.
Like I said, if I get stuck, I get stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as we predicted and as we expected, WWDC was canceled last week between the two shows. Good decision, obviously, by Apple. I love the positive spin. Phil Schiller's comments in the press release said, is there any good news about this, in your opinion, or is this all just bad news?
No, I think that there actually is some good news in this. And the fact, okay, what we have to remember, and we've said this every year to people about WWDC, this is a developers conference. It has nothing to do with the public.
Yep.
So what did Phil and Apple need to make happen for WWDC this year in 2020 under these extreme circumstances to be a success? They needed to be able to get developers the information that they need to make better apps.
Yep.
And they're doing that. So I don't know how that can be a failure or, WWDC is going to... Developers want the info. That's what they want. Now, of course, is it great to get together? Obviously, I'm not going to be doing a party this year.
Yeah.
And are you going to miss out on the fun and the dinners and all of that kind of stuff? Well, to be honest, you're missing out on now because you're quarantined at home.
Yeah,
so, developers want the info and the APIs. They want those classes. They want all of this stuff. And Apple is going to provide it. So I think that they've been... Given the amount of time that they had to deal with all this stuff, I think they've done a pretty remarkable job. I mean, I'm sure that there are still people in Apple scrambling like, holy shit. But that's what we want. That's what Apple has to provide. Or, they could have canceled it outright and just said no.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'm sure that was part of the thinking of let's just cancel it, but that would have been very quickly shouted down by any number of people because it really isn't feasible. It's a possibility, but according to the way Apple works, it's really not feasible, especially given all the rumors that we've heard coming maybe even next year about ARM and things like that. We'll find out at WWDC whether or not that's going to happen. But this is an important event, not just for developers, but also for Apple, because it lets Apple tell the developer community, its users, its vendors, hey, this is the direction we're going in for the next year when it comes to our software and then by extension, our hardware. So I think it was a great decision by Apple. As I said off the top of the show, it relieves the pressure of those developers of making a decision on their own of, oh shit, okay, it's part of my job. I really need to go, but I don't want to go because of all these various issues, or I couldn't go. And again, governments have made that a lot easier for Apple as well too, because they've closed borders. Again, the U.S. borders closed, the European U.S. borders closed. So it was a moot point. Apple, even if Apple hadn't made the decision this past week, by now they couldn't have done a WWDC, even if they wanted to right now.
Right. But I think what I believe that leading up to the announcement, Apple had this online thing in their back pocket.
Yes.
And they were waiting to see, okay, all of a sudden, for some unknown reason, as quickly as it came, it went away. And, everybody is safe again. Okay, well, we can still do WWDC. There's no need to pre-announce an online WWDC months in advance if everything looks like it might get back to normal.
Yep.
Well, clearly that hasn't happened. And I will say again, especially in the Bay Area, the government has ordered people to shelter in place,
yes.
which means that you cannot go outside of your home.
Yep.
And I thought I was reading a story the other day, but it was like a transcript of the actual order. And leaving your house is a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
They can fine you.
Yep.
So the streets are absolutely bare. There is nobody out anywhere. Now, you can go for health appointments and you can go get groceries.
Yep.
But, basically other than that, Erica said the other day, so basically the government just stripped out all the fun. And she they closed the bars and the restaurants and the concerts, and they just took all the fun out of everything. And that's why I kind of feel safer where I am right now. So, when Apple has to make a decision, they will make the right decision, I believe. And I think that the online thing was clearly, because you can't come up with that overnight.
Yeah.
That was clearly in their back pocket. And when things started to get worse and government started to shut things down, schools, businesses, I mean, every bar in the state of California is closed.
Yeah.
So, at that point, like you said, there is no choice left.
Yeah.
You just, and we talked before the past couple of weeks when we were talking about this. If Apple starts registration, that's a totally different story.
Yes.
But they didn't want to do that because then people are going to start buying airplane tickets and hotels.
Yep,
and,
that's right.
That kind of stuff. So I think that Apple did the right thing. And I think that by providing developers with the information that they still need, they've done what they need to do for the community. And I would just like to point out, after 4 days of steady drinking, I think that was a pretty intelligent remark.
It's almost like you had it written down.
I just want to point that out.
That was pretty good. Yeah, I was impressed. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Now, Apple has also closed all of its stores. Ironically enough, they've reopened the stores, most of the stores in China, but they've closed stores around the rest of the world. They've done a very good job of that too. They left a few stores open for folks who need to get returned items. They've made it very clear how they're doing this. The best part of it, in my opinion anyway, is Apple has said all those retail employees will continue to get paid their average hourly salary, which is the way I think most businesses should do it. Not every business can do it. If you're a restaurant, that's hard. If you're a bar, that would be hard. But I think that's a good model for other companies to follow. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I know that there are other big companies in Silicon Valley that are doing the same thing, and I give all of those companies full credit.
Yep.
Pay your employees, and, some of them, and I believe Apple is doing this too, are even paying their contractors.
Yeah.
So, and then retail employees and things like that. So everybody is taken care of.
Yeah.
And, you got to give these companies credit for that, no matter who they are, because they're already losing a ton of money with this thing going, like Apple closing down stores and, all that kind of stuff. They can't sell anything worldwide.
Yeah.
And China was shut down for a while, so you can include that in worldwide, even though they're open now. There's a church bell ringing in the background. I'm not sure if I'm going to get hit by lightning here or what. So I give all of those companies credit for doing that. Now, there are other people that are not so lucky.
That's right.
And we've seen this like at the venues for the sporting events and concerts, those people that work, and everybody that works at a bar in California.
Yep.
Now, I know that some bars, obviously the bartenders work for tips, basically.
Yeah.
And if their tips, if it's a slow week or something, their tips don't make a certain amount, then the owners will give them a little bit of money to make up to a certain base. But that base is not enough to really live on.
Yeah.
But even I know a couple of bars that are doing that. The owner said, I will continue to pay you even though we're closed.
Yeah.
This amount. So, you got to give them credit too, because they are making absolutely no money now. So it's really tough all the way around. So I give all of those companies that are doing this credit, everybody.
Yeah, it's a hard situation that's not going to get solved in the next couple of weeks. There's no doubt about that. This is something that's going to last at least probably until the beginning of the summer, if not even into at least the middle of the summer. So batten down the hatches, kids. We're in for a bumpy ride, as Betty Davis would say.
Well, I don't want to get too political, but I don't want to get political at all.
Yeah,
let's be clear. But I think part of the problem in the U.S. is that there's not enough testing.
Yep.
And I think the U.S. is a lot worse than what they actually think it is. They're talking about, we have 3,000 cases or whatever. I think it's a lot higher than that.
Yep. Because
the people that need to get tested aren't getting tested because there's no testing kits. So, or not enough.
Yeah.
So I think that the worst in that respect is yet to come, and we'll see. So I think it's going to last throughout the summer.
In the good news department, we've got to assume that the rumors of Apple doing a press launch of products around this time, the end of March, were true. Apple announced today, the new iPad Pro and new MacBook Air. Let's talk about the new iPad Pro. It looks pretty incredible, doesn't it?
Oh my God, it looks incredible. Oof.
Now, no one's had their chance to get their hands on one yet, but as Apple is saying, your next computer is not a computer. That's from the video that they posted and from the specs that you see. It's kind of hard to argue that for the vast majority of people, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, the vast majority of the people, are they going to use LiDAR? No.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very specific thing for their developers to be able to make some really, really, not just cool apps. We're talking advanced apps.
Yep.
So when you use LiDAR, it is continuing to update all the time.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is very, very advanced. And, this is what NASA is using.
Yeah.
LiDAR is used in self-driving, and it's, all kinds of different things. So when you look at that for developers, it's incredible. But, the thing that impressed me the most, and, I was almost embarrassed to say it when I wrote the story today, but that the keyboard. I have bitched for years about that keyboard, the smart keyboard, where it just didn't make any sense to me. I found it difficult to type on. So they come out with the smart keyboard, and then they had trackpad support, which I also poo-pooed, that I didn't think was a good idea. And maybe I'm wrong, because what I saw today with the trackpad, it looked really good.
Yes, but that's a $350 keyboard.
Hey,
come on!
I can't help it if you're Canadian.
What does that mean?
That's not my problem.
No, it's $350 US.
I know. That's even more Canadian.
That's just nuts.
That's like a 45-gallon drum of whale blubber for you.
It's a second home for most Canadians. Come on. But now, one of the things that you said in your post on the Loop with regards to the keyboard, and I thought it was very interesting. Now, keeping in mind that neither Jim or I or anyone else has actually used these things, we're going based on what we see in the videos and what Apple says on the website. Yes, it floats. It's kind of a cute little tagline there. How it's sticking to the back of that thing, I don't know. Is it magnets? Is it glue?
Magnets, yeah,
okay,
magnets. Yeah.
But you said that you thought this thing would work better on your lap. I can't see that that would be possible. It's going to be very, very top heavy.
I don't believe it is.
You don't think so?
I do not. So what I'm looking at and being able to work better on my lap is the 130-degree viewing angle.
Okay.
And that's part of the problem with the current smart keyboard, because the smart keyboard basically has two viewing angles, bad and worse, on your lap.
Yeah.
On the table, it's fine. But on your lap, it sucks. Being able to have a full 130-degree viewing angle is going to make that a moot point. Now it just works. But I think it'll be great.
But what I'm saying is resting that on your lap looks like the weight of the top of the iPad will tip it away from your lap.
No, Shawn, I mean, come on. This is Apple. You don't think that they tested that? If that's the case, then I'll rip them to shreds for that.
Well, come on now. We've done this before with Apple. The things that they've, I mean, look at the Magic Mouse with the charger on the bottom of it. They don't necessarily test everything logically. So I'm not going to give Apple the benefit of the doubt on this one.
No, they don't assume that you're going to use the most and charge it. They figure, and just sit down for this. They figure that you're not enough of a moron to want to use your mouse and then plug that thing in. But if that doesn't resonate with you, then I get that.
Yeah, but still, it was a dumb place for the charging port on the mouse, no matter where it is. Every other device charges in a way that you can still use the device while it's charging. The Magic Mouse, you couldn't. Come on.
I can't argue with that. I just can't. I tried. I can't.
You can't. There's no way you can. So that's why I'm saying this from looking at it, the physics of it looks like the weight of the iPad, the top of that keyboard is going to tilt. If you put that on your lap, on a desk, it'll be fine. But on your lap,
I have to believe that you're wrong.
Yeah, that's the problem. You have to believe that, but doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Trackpad support seems to be a big deal for a lot of folks. Are you excited by trackpad support?
Again, I said for years, I don't get why you need a trackpad on an iPad, because the trackpad is the screen. Yep. It is the iPad.
That's right.
But, geez, what I saw today and the implementation of the trackpad, I mean, I was pretty excited about it, I got to be honest. And, there's one instance where, I could have been wrong. I'm not saying that I was wrong, but, I could have been wrong there and saying the trackpad support. And I guess, like I said in the story today, what I didn't count on was Apple being smart and implementing trackpad support in a way that was very intelligent and intuitive.
Yep.
And that's on me. I mean, I should have known that you look at trackpad support, you look right now or yesterday, you would look at that Windows
Surface.
And, that's just like a computer screen, I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking when I thought trackpad support.
Yeah.
But the fact that Apple did it in this very intuitive way, and they actually thought about, well, we don't want to do it exactly the same as the Mac. We want to do it different so that, it complements the way that you use an iPad. Well, then, okay. I blame it on you. I mean...
Well, yeah.
No, I really, based on what I saw, I think that maybe I was wrong about the trackpad.
I think the biggest advantage of the trackpad is with a keyboard is that you don't have to reach up any amount of distance to tap
Right.
your screen and bring your hands back down. With a
Yeah.
trackpad, your hands stay at the very same level, and you just move your thumb or your finger, and you go back to the keyboard. It's a very short distance to move. That's the advantage I see to the trackpad. A lot of folks who are heavy users of gestures love the trackpad. I've never done a gesture in my life except for the
Yeah.
one finger one. But otherwise,
Yeah.
I don't use gestures on trackpad.
Most of your one gestures are to me too.
Exactly.
So.
I just did it just now. Just now.
Yeah,
You can't even see it, but I just did it just now. But then the trackpad coupled with the new way Apple's doing the cursor. One of the things that we all
Right.
thought when we thought cursor, we thought, okay, we're going to get the same arrow cursor we've all been looking at for 25 years on the Macintosh. I think the cursor implementation is the most interesting aspect of what Apple's doing with this new keyboard. I think it's just fascinating.
It's beautiful. I mean, it turns into a circle when you touch the touchpad.
Yep. Shit. Just lost Jim. Jim?
Hey.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, lost you for a second. You said it turns into a circle when you touch the trackpad.
And it turns into a circle, which is a representation of your finger.
Yep.
And then when you go over elements that you can click on, like a search box or, add a new thing in the interface, it turns into a nice rounded corner square around that interface element. I mean, yeah, okay. So fine, Phil, I was wrong. Or Craig or whoever came up with that.
It's a brilliant way of looking at it.
Brilliant way of doing it. I mean, it is trackpad support, but the Mac doesn't do that. And Dave brought up a good point. Are they going to start doing that on the Mac?
That's a good point. Yeah.
I don't know. It's pretty intuitive.
Yeah, I really like that demo that I saw of it on the video The Verge had posted. It looks really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I was such against a trackpad, but I'm still looking out over that view, so I don't care.
Now the LiDAR stuff we mentioned it off the top. Right now, I don't think that's going to be important for the average consumers. This is one of those things that Apple's added that in a year's time, 2 years' time is going to blow up.
Well, honestly, I think you're going to see LiDAR blow up before that.
Yeah.
I think that you're going to see LiDAR in by the end of the summer start to catch on. But yes, blow up huge amount will be in the next year. But yeah, this is so important. Yeah. I think developers are going to start taking advantage of it right now. And as I said in the article, Apple in their press release talked about the Measure app and how it can do things better now. Well, let's look beyond that to games and interior design and think what they can do with LiDAR. I mean, that's just, it's unbelievable to think what developers are going to be able to do. And remember, for years, you and I have talked about what's important about WWDC. Well, WWDC sets the standard for the next year.
Yeah.
And developers every year kind of, bump up against what Apple set the year before. They bump up against that envelope of here's what you can do. And then Apple sets the bar even higher and developers go even more. And that has happened in iOS every single year since it's been released. Every year that has happened. Well, now with this hardware technology, with LiDAR, I think Apple has push the bar like maybe 2 times higher, because this is going to be incredible for a lot of developers.
If you ever want an example of how Apple looks further ahead than we certainly do, there was this great tweet by Kirk Burgess. Kirk tweeted today that in 2013, a company called PrimeSense had a demo of their LiDAR modules for mobile devices, which included placing virtual furniture via AR. Apple purchased the company shortly after. Here we are in 2020, and the very same demo finally shows up in an ad for a shipping Apple product. It took them 7 years. So 7 years ago, Apple saw some sort of technology in this PrimeSense company, bought them, and then 7 years later, the technology finally made it into a shipping Apple product. That's Apple's time frames. Apple is not working on things that are going to come out in 3 months or 6 months. Or Apple is working on stuff now that's coming out in 5 years.
Yeah, and when you look at the companies that Apple buys, sometimes they're buying people.
Yep.
Sometimes they buy technology. So they'll include that technology in their own products. Sometimes, they take all that stuff together and make an incredible product.
Yeah.
I mean, this new stuff in AR on the iPad also includes people inclusion, so people can walk in front of the AR stuff, and it still shows the AR stuff. I mean, this is so far beyond what anybody else is doing, except maybe NASA.
Steven Sinofsky, formerly of Microsoft, said, "So here we are today with an iPad that has a trackpad. Many are chuckling at the capitulation that the iPad was never a real computer, and finally Apple admitted it. Laptop. Apple has invented a laptop." Now, I'm using that quote out of context. He doesn't believe that Apple has done that. But what do you say to people who do say that Apple just basically has reinvented the iPad, the laptop?
Well, okay. So, I mean, if you're an Apple hater, that's a fair point. Right? I mean, if you just want to see Apple fail and all of that kind of stuff. But I would say to those people, what has been the best-selling tablet over the past 10 years? It's been the iPad.
Yes.
And why is that? Because people didn't like the shit that was there before.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that Apple came up with something really great with iOS as a mobile platform that, you could do things differently. And the apps that have come to iOS have allowed people to do things. And let's not forget that you can't do as much 4K video on a computer as you can on an iPad.
No.
So these things are super powerful, and people love them, from old people to young people, everybody in between. You can do more and more things on an iPad. Now, did the iPad need, and I'm not surprised we haven't seen the story yet that, Steve Jobs would never have a trackpad.
That's right.
I mean,
shut up.
Shut up. Should the iPad have had a trackpad all along? Who knows? I don't know. I don't really care, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, Apple is moving forward with what they think will make the iPad better. And so if that's... Now, the keyboard, they should have done that from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I hated the keyboard always. I've always said I hated the keyboard.
Yeah.
But the trackpad, I was against it. But now that I see it, bring it on.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see how people react to the iPad, the new iPad and the new MacBook Air. Let's talk about that one now. $1,000. That's the lowest price one. You said in your piece on The Loop, as much as I love the iPad, I'm a Mac guy at heart. Almost everything I create is done on my Mac, an iMac and a 16-inch MacBook Pro. Could you do what you want to do on a MacBook Air?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
It's that powerful?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Now, I have no doubt about that, and I will qualify that with what I wrote in the story, that at one point, years back, probably 4 or 5 years, I was traveling, and all I had was a MacBook Air, and it was a 4 gigabyte MacBook Air. It wasn't even like topped out or anything. I had a Logic project that I needed to finish. And I thought, well, I'm basically screwed.
Yeah.
I put that on the MacBook Air, and I finished that project. Now, to be perfectly honest, and I said this in the story too, that was it the best experience? No.
Yeah.
Uh, could an iMac or a MacBook Pro do it better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's not what the MacBook Air is built for. So I know that the MacBook Air is very powerful. And this is years ago. MacBook Air was very powerful. So this is where you have to make your buying decision. Right now I'm using a 16-inch MacBook Pro. It has a big screen and it's powerful, but I don't travel that much. Yeah. So, if I was traveling a lot, I would probably just buy an Air and travel with that.
Yeah, you're right. For the most part, if even as nominally a professional photographer, for me, it'd be a tough call now with the iPad Pro, the Apple Pencil, and the keyboard, whether I would do that versus a MacBook Air. I wouldn't take that over a MacBook Pro, but if my choices were, and actually I've got a story getting ready to post on the Loop, if you've got $1,500, do you get a MacBook Pro that fits in that budget or an iPad Pro that fits into that budget? It's a very tough call. It's
a tough call.
There's a big overlap now. I don't know if that's going to hurt or help Apple, that there's so much of an overlap. For the first time in a long time, it comes down not to the device you're using, but how you want to use it. So if you're sitting at a desk and want a big screen, I've got a monitor here and a monitor there and a full-size keyboard, and I don't travel, well, then maybe I'd go for the MacBook Pro. But if I work from coffee shops and I work from beautiful beaches in Mexico and airport lounges, then maybe I'd pick the iPad. It comes down to less what the machine is and more who you are.
Well, and you're exactly right. And don't forget that there's also one other thing that flies in here, and I think that is where you and I come in, is that if you talk to me, and I said I'm a Mac guy, because that's what I grew up with. I grew up with the Mac. The iPad and everything is all, it's not new to me, but if things are really coming in, then I will go to my Mac. And that's how I use my Mac to do the actual creation and, all that kind of stuff. I use my iPad for research and, all that stuff that happens at night. So let me ask you this. What would you buy if you were going out right now?
If I had $1,500, I think right now I'd buy the iPad Pro with the keyboard and the pencil. Because I can see how I could use that in my classes that I teach in other places. Much more so than being able to take the iMac around. I've got an iMac now. My MacBook Pro died years ago, because I don't travel. I've never bothered to replace it. So for me, I think the iPad Pro would be the device I'd get in that equation.
And you're comfortable with that with photography and everything else?
Yeah, especially because most of the photography I do isn't professional level photography. It's teaching photography, in that I'm just showing students how to do these things. I'm not getting stuff ready for print or for a magazine or, those kinds of things. I don't need a big screen for in-depth retouching or that kind of stuff. I need a screen that I can turn and show to students, or to easily attach to an external monitor or TV screen. And the portability of an iPad Pro, and being able to do it from a coffee shop table, or be able to work from on location kind of thing, is more important now than the power to do some heavy duty Lightroom or Photoshop work.
So portability is important to you. So, you're a Mac guy. By the way, congratulations on the 26th year.
Thank you very much.
But clearly you're a Mac guy, because this stuff didn't exist back when you started.
Absolutely.
Because I am also in my 26th year.
You are?
So You know, that's why I said that you and I are the Mac guys.
Yep.
But I don't know.
Now,
I mean,
now I wouldn't if I had to give up my iMac, if you said I can only have one device, then it would be the MacBook Pro. Because that's got the power, the speed. I can hook it up to external monitors. I can do a lot of other things. Out of all the devices, my iMac, the one I'm looking at right now, is the device I like the most for the overall work I do because of the size of the screen, because of the power, the RAM, the hard drive, all that kind of stuff. But if I was forced to make a choice with one machine and get rid of all of them, given the fact that I do sometimes do classes outside and want to do more classes outside of the home, then it would be tempting to get an iPad Pro.
Huh.
Just because of the power of these new ones, because of the power of Photoshop and Lightroom on the iPads, the ability to connect my camera directly to the iPad and get photos off of it and deal with high resolution graphics, HEIC graphics, full resolution in RAW on an iPad Pro with a pencil and a keyboard. Yeah, that would be a big change for me.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I never thought I would hear you say that.
Nope, neither did I. And I wouldn't have said this until the iPad Pro, until Lightroom, full version of Lightroom on the iPad, those kinds of things. This was not true 2 years ago. This was not true until those things happened. And now, because if I do want to get a portable machine, it's probably going to be an iPad Pro, if only because the whole family can do more on the iPad Pro. My son can do drawing programs on it. My wife can watch Netflix on it. You know, the whole family can use the device in more ways than we all could use just a MacBook Pro.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, then good points.
Thank you very much. I does my best. What else we got going on in the Mac? Oh, now, did you see that Apple dominates Fortune's greatest list? Apple dominates Fortune's greatest designs of modern times list. You see this?
I did.
1959, Fortune did this. It was very funny to look at the old PDF that they posted of what were the greatest products in 1959. Apple dominated this list in remarkable ways. The iPhone was said to be the greatest design of modern times. So let's just say that's the 20th and 21st century. Would you agree with that? The greatest design.
Well, I have to think what they're looking at there is the fact that the iPhone dramatically altered an industry that hadn't changed in 20 years.
Yeah.
And if you look at it like that, like what product has altered the way people communicate and live? Well, you know, it's hard to argue against the iPhone.
Yep.
It really is. And I have to think that was part of what they were thinking about when they said that. Because, you know, is there a new toaster out that, you know, is different than everybody else? Sure, it does bagels now, you know? I mean, okay, well, that doesn't really alter things.
Yep.
But what Apple did with the iPhone literally changed the way the world communicated. And I don't think that you can really understate that.
Yes, but is it a great design? That's
It was a great design.
Yes. Yeah.
I really do believe it was a great design. Look at what we had in 2006.
Yep.
We had the BlackBerry. We had, you know, so you basically had the physical keyboard, and, you know, you had flip phones, and you had the Nokia little chocolate bar phones, and you had all of this stuff. They were all basically the same thing,
yes,
except one flipped.
Yep.
You know, all of a sudden now you have apps. And you know, not at first. I know Steve said web apps were the best, which clearly even he didn't believe because they came out with APIs a year later.
Yep.
So, but you had this thing where you could touch, and it was very intuitive. I mean, it didn't take long for people to understand, oh, if I touch on the screen, that just opens up.
Yep.
Wow. Because how many times did I go into my BlackBerry preferences and try and figure out how the hell to set something up?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
if you remember, after the announcement, you and I did this podcast.
Yes.
And you asked me if I would give up my BlackBerry for the iPhone.
Yep.
And at that point, even though I got the iPhone earlier than the public, at that point, I didn't have the iPhone. And I said, well, you know what? I love my BlackBerry, so I'm going to have to wait and see how things go. I'll tell you, when I got to New York and they gave me the iPhone, I would have been on the top of the Empire State Building throwing that BlackBerry right off.
I don't think people now realize that once Apple captured the BlackBerry fan, the BlackBerry mania, because BlackBerry, for you youngsters out there, was huge. That was the device. That was the thing that everyone used. A lot of us hated them, but they were so powerful communication-wise that we loved the ability to communicate. And for Apple to surpass that so quickly meant that it was going to change everything automatically.
Now, to be clear, communication-wise with the BlackBerry basically meant email. They had a very good, secure email.
Yeah.
And that was it. Yeah. I mean, you weren't FaceTiming or anything.
Yeah, you weren't surfing the web on the BlackBerry.
Oh, fuck. You were lucky to get the damn thing to do anything but get email. But it was great at email.
It was. It rocked at email. Number 2 on the list was the Macintosh, which I think is fair. I think even from a design perspective, because if we remember the design of computers before the Macintosh versus afterwards, that it influenced design across the board. But the design of that Macintosh itself, all by itself, taken out of the context of its time, is still a great little design. It may not have worked all that well, especially compared to computers nowadays, but the design of it with the little handle on the top and the lack of fans and all that kind of stuff, design-wise, it was an incredible little machine.
Well, it's unfair to compare it to what's available now. No. Compare it to what was available then. It was revolutionary then. Yeah. Like, what? I can do this at home on this little thing? Because remember that computers at that time, and maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but computers took up entire rooms. And all of a sudden, Woz and Steve came up with this thing you could do this at home. No, it was expensive and all that kind of stuff. But design-wise, we're not talking about all those downfalls, but design-wise, it was brilliant. Yeah. I mean,
number 10 on the list was the iPod, and I think that's indisputable that the iPod design was mind-blowing for the time. Even now, I mean, I think if Apple brought back the iPod, they'd still sell 10 million of those things in a year.
Yeah, my favorite, and I've always said this, my favorite iPod was the iPod Nano with the lanyard, so that it was around your neck.
I hated that stupid lanyard.
Oh, I love that. Well, see, remember though, at that time, I was traveling a lot.
Yeah.
Like a ton I was traveling. And, I would just put that iPod on. I would have the corded headphones plugged into it, and I could just tip it up on the lanyard and look at it and see what playlist I was on or whatever. That was the most brilliant iPod that I think I've ever had.
I still remember.
I really.
I still remember the day flying from a Macworld Expo, and I had my iPod listening to music, and the guy next to me in the plane, once they told us we could, open up our luggage, brings out his CD player, the big CD player, and his CD library, you know, that flip thing that we all had, like with 100 CDs in it, and him going through trying to find something to listen to, and he looked over at me and goes, "Do you want to listen to some of this?" I went, "No, I already got that album." And I held up the iPod. He was like, "What's that?" I said, "Plug your headphones in and try this." And the look on his face, this is 20 years later almost, the look on his face when he plugged in and listened to the same music, and I didn't tell him anything about the screen. I didn't tell him a damn thing about what was going on, but he immediately held it, saw that click wheel, started spinning it, and it was like the gods had come down and touched him and given him knowledge. It was just the best thing in the world. It was amazing.
See, when you look at design, that's what I was talking about with the iPhone. It's so intuitive that you just kind of know. And we've seen videos, we've seen all this stuff with children with an iPhone or an iPad. And what do they want to do? They want to touch it. You touch it, it does something. There you go. Yep. They have it. I mean, there are kids out there that are so much better at the iPad and iPhone than I am.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what they do, and then they grow up with it. But imagine having that foresight to say, this is what we're going to do. And, you know, so it's hard to argue with any of those choices. I'm surprised the iPod is actually so low.
Number 10, yeah. Although I will say I'm disappointed that the iMac didn't make the list at all. That seems to me to be a glaring omission. Even if you can't include the iMac in number 2, which is the Mac, because they're talking about specifically the very first Macintosh.
Right.
The iMac is obviously a very different machine, and it should be in there. Even from the history of the company, I've always said I will always maintain that it saved Apple, but from
it did.
But from a design perspective, there was nothing like it, and there hasn't been since. A machine that was that powerful, but that design of that thing was magical.
Maybe they looked at the fact that the iMac was an all-in-one, and Apple had several all-in-ones all through the years. You know, the Performance series, the LC 575 type series. I mean, those were all-in-ones. And the iMac, for all intents and purposes, was an all-in-one, although it did save the company. Maybe that's what they were looking at.
But if your list is about design, you cannot argue that the iMac's design was revolutionary for its time. I mean, look at the things that Apple took out. I mean, it made USB what it is today. I don't know. I don't even know we'd have USB today if it weren't for the iMac.
And a USB was around for a long time before the iMac.
That's right. And the idea of the internet, it made accessing the internet so much easier for so many people. By the way, along with Adam Ank's Internet Starter Kit, the combination of the iMac's ease of use and Adam Ank's book and software that came with the book made the internet accessible to millions of Mac users, millions of people who might never have gotten on the internet for a few more years if it hadn't been for that iMac. No, it should have been on the list of the greatest designs of the 20th and 21st century, no doubt about it.
Do you remember the commercial for the original iMac when they said getting on the internet? It's a three-step process. Number 1 was turn it on. Number 2 was plug in the telephone, the telephone cable into the telephone port. And number 3 was, oh wait, there is no number 3.
The classic, there is no step 3. Oh, that was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Folks, but do you have any questions for me, Jim?
I already asked you the questions.
Jim is in a beautiful place in Mexico with his beautiful new fiancée, so we're going to let him go. Jim, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Well, she actually went out to dinner without me because I had to do this. So, you know.
I'm sure you can find her.
Can I stick around and chat? Or...
if you want to, if you got something to talk about, we can hang. We can self-distance together.
No, seriously, she left. She went out to dinner.
we can Netflix and chill together, buddy, if you need to.
All right. Thank you, Shawn. I appreciate it.
Talk to you next week, buddy. See you.
Bye.
Poor Jim. He's all alone there in Mexico now. Poor guy. Folks, when we come back after this break, we're going to talk about does better camera gear make you a better photographer? Yes or no? What do you think? Send me an email to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. We'll see what you folks think about it. Coming up right after this short break. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening, whether you're tuned in live to the show or whether you're in the archive. If you're listening in live, please join us in the IRC chat room. Our good friend Monty has set up an IRC chat room server. Really easy to get to. You go to the front page, the yourmaclifeshow.com website. Right below the video, you'll see a place where you can pop in your username, and it drops you right into our IRC. I'd love to have you join us there. In the starting point photography segment for tonight's show, it was an article I saw on, I think it was Petapixel, I'll find it in a second here, that asked the question, does better gear make you a better photographer? And my instinctual reaction was something that I have thought about for a while now, and my answer to that question would have been yes, instinctively. But then my friend Jared Earl, who is a professional photographer, motorcycle photographer, and I got into it on Twitter, and he pointed out the fallacy of my argument. So we'll talk about that. The reason why I was wrong was this. When I first started taking pictures, becoming more serious about being a photographer, I had a lovely little Nikon D50. DSLR had a couple of cheap, inexpensive lenses on it, and I learned everything I could possibly learn about that particular camera. It was important to me for me to figure the camera out. I wanted to be able to know what this stuff did and why it did what it did. What all these buttons means. My nature of, if I own a thing, I want to know everything about the thing. I want to know what that button does and what that button does and what that button does and how those buttons interact with each other. So I went out, bought books, watched videos, talked to photographers, read websites, did everything I possibly could. And hopefully, I like to think that over time, I became a better photographer. And in some instances, at least hopefully, again, a halfway decent photographer. And so as I became a better photographer, and because I had more knowledge of what good photography was, I was able to start stretching the boundaries of, rather than just taking pictures of friends and family, I was starting to be more creative with my photographies, thinking more about taking better pictures, how to take better pictures. Not only seeing light, but learning about light, managing light, and manipulating light. And there came a point in time when I was visualizing images that my camera couldn't capture. Little Nikon D50 just wasn't a good enough camera to be able to recreate what I was seeing in my mind's eye. I knew what I was doing was correct. I knew that I had the right shutter speed and the right aperture and the right ISO. I knew I had the technical aspects of the thing in my head correct. But my camera couldn't do it. Technically, my camera could not recreate the images of my creative side. And then one day, the folks at Nikon loaned me for Macworld Expo, at the time, the top of the line Nikon D4, I think it was. Oh my God, this was a professional level camera. This was a $5,000 camera, and they gave me loaned me a Nikon 2470 $2,000 lens. And I took it to Macworld Expo, and I took the best pictures of my life because I visualized the images, knew what I wanted to do creatively, was able to technically translate that creative in my head into camera settings and then take the picture and get the picture I imagined. And that's when I knew that it was the camera that was holding me back. It wasn't my knowledge as a photographer. Yeah, MacBand D3S. Yes, MacBand, you're right. It was the D3S. It wasn't when I went to the U.S. Open. It was the Nikon D3S. The Nikon D3S at that time had an insane ISO range of 12,800. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. But what it means is it shot in low light really, really well. One of the problems I had with the Nikon D50 at a place like Macworld Expo is in bars and at parties and at night, it wasn't taking very good shots. The shots were always blurry. I could never set the shutter speed to be slow enough to capture the action without blurring because there wasn't enough light. But with the D3S, I cranked the ISO up to 12,800 and got great shots. I was getting shots in bars and at parties that there's no way the D50 could have shot. So it was the camera that was holding me back. So that's where I was thinking, yes, better gear makes you a better photographer. But it wasn't until Jared Earl pointed out, you didn't know that until you had the knowledge, the ability to be a good photographer first, that the gear was going to make a difference. So gear in and of itself won't necessarily make you a better photographer. Just having a Nikon D3S, if you're a bad photographer, will not make you even a not bad photographer. We often make fun of Jim and his admitted inability to take decent photos. I can give Jim that same D3S or the new Nikon D5 or a Canon whatever with the best lens in the world. His photos are not going to get better. His photos might be sharper. They might be clearer. They might have better lighting, but they're not going to be good photos, if you know what I mean. They're going to be technically better, but even then maybe not, because he doesn't know how to set the camera up. He doesn't know how to manipulate the settings of the camera in order to get the shots. He also doesn't visualize his shots too, which is another downside of what Jim does. All cameras essentially do the same thing. All cameras have a lens, a shutter mechanism, a sensor that when you point it at things captures an image. That's the basics. You as a photographer have to learn how that camera translates that image into the sensor, onto your screen, onto the back of its screen, onto your computer screen. Just because you've got a great camera doesn't make you a great photographer. Even if you're a good photographer, if you don't know how cameras work, if you don't know how changing your shutter speed affects your aperture, how it affects how your ISO affects your shutter speed and your aperture, how all these things work together, then even if you've got a proverbial good eye, it's not going to make a lot of difference because you're going to be shooting pretty much on auto mode. And there's nothing really wrong with auto mode, but auto mode will not make you a good photographer, will not make you a better photographer. What makes you a better photographer, in my opinion, isn't the best camera in the world, isn't the best lenses, isn't the biggest sensor, isn't the best software. What makes you a good photographer is your knowledge of photography and your creativity. The deeper both of those things are for you, the better a photographer you will become. And you'll be able to take good photos no matter what camera you use, whether it's an iPhone or a point and shoot or a $6,000 DSLR. I've been having fun with see if I can't grab this real quick. Having fun with the new puppy. And if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you know you've seen 8,000 nice puppy photos over the last months that we've had the dog. And one of the things is it's really shown me how Melissa and I are sitting side by side taking photos of the dog, taking photos of the people with the dog. And unless you know how your camera works, and unless you know how to manipulate your camera. Even an iPhone, we think of an iPhone as being a point and shoot, but even then it doesn't do necessarily the job that you think it might do. And here's a good example of it. Now, I can say this because Melissa's not here. I wouldn't say this if she was sitting next to me. So Melissa we're sitting in bed, and our son Damon and the puppy are playing. And Damon and the puppy are given big hugs. So here's the picture of Damon and the puppy. Now Melissa is sitting literally a foot beside me. She's right next to me, and she takes the same picture. We look at her picture, and we look at mine, and so we both take the picture, and we both do our quick little edits. Melissa shows me her picture, and her picture is fine. I show her my picture, and she goes, why did my picture come out that way? It's got nothing to do with the camera. It's got nothing to do with the iPhone. It had to do with my knowledge of photography, of light, of software, of the iPhone. I took it in the iPhone portrait mode. I tapped on the dog's eye to make sure the Bruno's eye was in focus. I made sure my f-stop in portrait mode was very low, so the background was all blurry. And then I turned it black and white. And it came out really, really nicely in black and white. I love this shot in black and white with Damon's eyes down, but the dog looking directly at us, his little floppy ears, and Damon's hair looks great, and that little spot of sun coming from the right-hand side of the photo. I love the wrinkles in Bruno's neck and how Damon's thumb is sort of buried itself in the wrinkles. To me, it came out great. The only downside is I cut out Bruno's left paw. If you look at the left-hand side, and you would not believe how much that bothers me. It really, really bugs me that I framed it wrong and I missed his paw. Here's another shot. This is Bruno lying in bed with us. He's just lying there. It's a beautiful sunny day. We both got a cup of coffee in our hands, and I grabbed the camera, pointed at Bruno, took the picture, and got this lovely shot. In about 4 seconds, Melissa was futzing with her camera. But it's because she hasn't practiced as much as I have with it, had forgotten. She knows, but she'd forgotten that all you really have to do with your camera, you just flip, you tap the screen, you flip it, you swipe to the left, and your camera app is open. And my camera app is always open now because of the puppy on portrait mode. So when I'll take my camera, my phone is off. So here it goes. Tap, swipe, portrait, focus, tap. About 4 seconds. 4 movements anyway. So I was ready to shoot. I knew how to shoot quickly. I knew how to get the shot right away. And yes, Monty says, someone please turn my ear right side out. That's the thing about this shot that bugs me too, is that his little ear is pointing in the wrong direction. They can't all be perfect shots. But none of this has to do with the camera itself, the quality of the camera. Well, again, Melissa could have had a $6,000 DSLR and she wouldn't have gotten the same shot that I got, or it wouldn't have been as good as the shot I got. The camera itself doesn't matter. Whatever camera you have now, don't necessarily go out and buy a new fancy camera because you think your photography isn't good and a new camera will make it better. It won't. You learning how to use your camera, the one you have in your hand right now, whether it's an iPhone or a point and shoot or DSLR, learning all you can about that camera, and then using that camera to its maximum ability. Then, once you've done that, once you're unable to get shots that you can visualize in your head and that you know you've got everything set up right, once you can't get those shots on the device you're using, then you can upgrade to a new, better, different kind of camera. MacMan says, if I had my phone handy, I'd post one for my nephew's birthday. Night mode with just one candle in the cake was amazing. Yeah, some of those night mode shots are great. But remember, night mode shots work best when there's at least one light source that's in the frame. Anytime you see night mode shots on Apple's website or that kind of stuff, look for that one light source. Apple's almost always got that one light source that helps you pick out that shot that is the shot that you want to get. We got I know this has been a while. I want to say, make sure I got the question. Where is it? Nope, I've lost it. Steve Kane says, a friend of mine is running macOS 10.7.5 at an iMac, mid-2011 one. She emailed me and said, a new thing is happening on my computer. When I browse the internet too often, a new advertising window pops up in the back. I notice it because there's a little flash on the screen. Very annoying. I'm guessing, Steve says, I'm guessing these are pop-under windows. I don't have Chrome on my Mac. Is there a setting in Chrome somewhere that will block this? If so, how to find it? Yes, you can, Steve. It's fairly easy. You go in the upper left-hand corner under Chrome, click on Preferences. A new window in Chrome will open up. It's unlike Safari that opens up a separate dialog box. This is a new website, web page that will open up in Chrome. You scroll down to the bottom where it says Advanced. It will take you to a whole bunch of other settings. And under those settings, whoops, have they moved it on me? I think they have. All right, hang on a second. Let me find it again. Manage Google accounts, payments, site settings, choose what information. Oh, I've turned this on. I know it doesn't happen to me very much anymore, but it's... it might be in privacy and security, in notifications. You can have those turned off or blocked. You can also have, there it is, pop-ups and redirects blocked. So you simply click on that and you tell Chrome to block all pop-ups and redirects. Now, it might hurt some websites that she uses. That's unlikely, though. And you can do what's called whitelisting some sites. So I've got several sites that are whitelisted that say don't block the pop-ups on these particular sites. But for the most part, that's what you're going to do is turn that off. The other thing is make sure she turns Flash off, because these might be Flash-based, and also JavaScript. Have JavaScript be allowed, or have JavaScript. I don't know if you can do it. Have it ask. Yeah, there's other websites you can just block all JavaScript on too as well. So have her play around with those settings, Steve, and see if those kinds of things will make changes and things like that. MacMan is saying, wow, use D610 with under 80,000 shutter activation for $500. That sounds too good to be true, MacMan, but it's not bad. Okay. Lens rental use section. I trust lens rental. Nikon rates the shutter at 150,000 K. MacMan, what I would do is I would find out how much it would cost to have that shutter replaced if you had to do it yourself, if you had to send it out, and factor that into it. Because 80,000 K, if Nikon rates the shutter at 150,000 plus Ks, that's in perfect conditions. I'd say that shutters probably might fail around 100,000. 120,000. So if it's already at close to 80,000, now 20,000 activation shutter application sounds like a whole lot, but still, you could just check to see how much that would cost to see if it's worth it. If that's a straight up deal, a used 610 body for $500, that's pretty good. My 600 was I think $2,000 when I bought it new. I'm looking at the new Nikon 870, I think, but for $570 you can get one for under 40K. Yeah, that's not. I'd go for that, MacMan. For $570 under 40K, I would definitely pick up that D60. Do not buy the 600. The 600 had issues with the oil on the sensor, and you don't want to mess with that. So it's not even worth the bother to get the 600, especially if you can get the 610 for a good price. What else we got going on? I think that's it, folks. If you are interested in the Tranya Remor earbuds, there's a promo code you can use on their website. You can't get it on Amazon because they're sold out on Amazon. I can send you the promo code. It's MQT4E2UC. The website is Tranya, TRANYA.com, and you can use them for 20% off the Remore earpods, if you'd like to use those. They're pretty good. Like I said, I was impressed. Sorry, I'm just putting this in the IRC chat room so folks can get it there. I was impressed. My son, my 14-year-old, he loves them. I handed them off to him, and he's using them now. So if you want that promo code, if you didn't catch it, send me an email, and I'll send you the promo code. That's it for tonight's show, folks. I want to say thanks very much to all you guys for being tuned in here on the eve of the 26th anniversary of my becoming a Macintosh or an Apple online broadcaster. We'll talk more about that probably on next week's show. I want to say thanks to our good friend Jim Dalrymple, The Loop at loopinsight.com. Congratulations to Jim for his engagement. I'm very, very happy for him and Erica. Folks, until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you're listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!